Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Channie Mize, and I'm the general manager for the Ohio Valley for Slalom. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Chris Eldredge, who is the vice president of the data office at Paycor. Hello, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me today. Talk to us a little bit about the skills and competencies that you believe are necessary for people on your team, and then just in general for folks, especially as it relates to data.
Yeah, so when it comes to data, there's a couple different dimensions, and I'm going to include data science in this mix. There are very different skill sets that are required for the various areas of data. If you think about the data warehouse and data cloud platform itself, the game has changed on how you think about managing your data cloud platform. You can't just go to your IT network team or support team and say, hey, I need a database installed. That's not how it works these days with the cloud. And cost management is its own discipline. So anybody who's managing your platform needs to really have an increasing focus on security and cost management and performance, because those are the things that can really have a huge impact if you do any of those wrong. Then there's, when it comes to the data engineering itself, there are really two key areas that I see. The first is movement of the data, your data pipelines. That is a skill into itself, and you need to make that as easy as possible for those resources to support as many pipelines as possible. The explosion of data means that data ingestion is a daily activity that requires net new changes to your data sources almost every single day. And that means that those people really need to be skilled at how do you make sure that you move data in a trusted way that's going to work today, tomorrow, and a year from now. And then you've got the consumption of the data. When you think about data marts, there's, of course, on the front end of that, your business intelligence and your analysts, but there's a layer in the middle there of how you translate that data from the raw system data that you're getting from your various transaction systems and maybe third-party systems, and how you put that into a structure that's consumable and understandable by the downstream resources, and keeping that synced up with those business alignment rules that you put in place. And so, having an appropriate set of data engineers that are focused on being content experts becomes really important. And then you've got your business intelligence, right? That's really about access, about how do you structure data to tell the right story. Data storytelling is obviously a very popular topic. And last, we'll get into data science. You know, most data scientists don't necessarily learn how to do it with harmonized, aligned, certified data. They're building their own features. They're building their own features, probably not even in a warehouse, but in pandas or some other thing. And those resources need to be really good at understanding, how do I match my model with my problem. And data becomes a question for them. So you really have to, in a comprehensive data team, make sure that you are serving up the right data and reusable features for those data scientists.
Yeah, that's so true. And speaking of which, how do you get to a more common set of data so that you can reduce cost of the data, pipeline and the management of that data? And then how do you make sure that you're delivering what the business needs? Like, how have you gotten there?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that everyone that you ask will say, I need data in real time, whether they do or not in reality. And the challenge is that the faster you make data available in cloud data warehouse platform today, the more expensive it can be. On top of that, how many times you manipulate or change the data can be expensive. And then even the objects themselves that you manage within the data warehouse have different cost bases. If you build a view that's views on views on views that does a dynamic generation every time, that's way more expensive than if you have a flat table with the same information when you query that. And so how you have to think about modern data warehouse data today is what's the effort to get it to where I need it to be consumable. And then when it is consumable, what is that pattern and what's the cost? If I have a finance team that's running a big set of queries once a month or once a quarter, that might be okay to have, distributed data. If you have an API on top of that data set that's running a million times a day, that can get very expensive if that data is not optimized for consumption.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, and then I assume that there's some kind of like journey you go on as you start mapping out what the business needs and optimizing the data across that space. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of times the business is not aware of data sets that might be in use by other departments or functions. And so it's really important to make sure that anything that is considered certified data that's been standardized is clear and used first. And you need to give those analysts incentives to use that data. One of those incentives is that when they need it adjusted or extended, you support those teams with the appropriate alignment as well as delivery of that request. It's also appropriate sometimes to say no and redirect them to a more appropriate data set rather than just generate a new one.
Hmm. That's right. Um, how do you evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of your group with data? Do you have any kind of MBOs or do you have any kind of ways that you look at what you're delivering and can tie it back to the company's performance?
Yeah. So there's a few things. Anything that you build in a data warehouse or any application for that matter requires support. And so one of the things that we want to make sure is that we set aside the appropriate resource and time frame to keep everything running and at as fresh as it can be. But everybody that works in data probably experiences what I do, which is initiatives show up constantly. We
Mhm.
need this new thing done. We have this new market opportunity. We have this new team that needs something. And to do that, you really have to have prioritization.
Mhm.
And that requires collaboration with your business partners, as well ensuring that your work that you're going to do is aligned with the overall corporate initiatives for the year. Paycor, like most organizations, typically has 3 to 5 critical initiatives that they perform every year that they're trying to build out, and data is no different. So as long as we can connect whatever we're trying to do to those things, that's what we try to do. And then we want to make sure that we're holding the team accountable. So that can be done at an individual request level, at if you're more in the agile world, at a feature level, or even at an epic level. And that's how we think about it is how well they're progressing against those requests to make sure that the delivery is achieving the business value that we promised.
Yeah, that's great. It's always nice to be able to tie things back to something that's quantifiable to show value. Um, are there any new or evolving trends that you're seeing in data?
Yeah, I do think that, if you listen to the messaging around AI, you hear a lot about getting AI into the hands of everyone.
Mhm.
But the reality is that that is no different than any other capability that's provided by a technical team, whether it's an application or a website or what it might be. And so what I'm seeing is that there's an increasing pressure on the data teams as well as the application teams to support these AI applications. And that means that it's not really your end user that are running these applications, but it's really your IT team that tends to already be a little bit stretched. And
Mhm.
so we really have to think about how do we make sure that we have the appropriate resource alignment and support as these new capabilities roll in? And from a data perspective, that really means there are new capabilities which result in new security, new types of application rollouts, new types of connectivity to the data warehouse that all need to be supported that may not be in use today.
Mhm. Yeah, that's certainly true, and everything is evolving so quickly, particularly with generative AI and AI. And so even knowing where things are going to be in the future is a bit of a challenge. As you think about it, how did you build a data culture in the organization? And you mentioned you had some great executive support, but there's also, getting getting the folks on the team kind of excited about it. Talk to us a little bit about how you started building that culture.
Well, we knew that just getting direction from the executives wasn't going to actually get the alignment that we wanted. So what we did at the very beginning is we built basically communities of practice. We invited everybody that we knew that had any type of role that was going to be relate to doing data analysis to participate in our business intelligence community. And really what we focused on there was education, making sure they knew what was available, what our plans were to build out more. But also, we wanted to make sure that we were a trusted partner for those resources. So every one of those resources, and at the time, this most of their job was wrangling data. 80 to 90% of what each one of them were doing was figuring out, how do I get the data? They might be pulling data from an API directly against a CRM system, for example, or they might be, slinging data in a spreadsheet. But that was their biggest problem. And so if we could solve for them, removing some of the obstacles to get the data that they needed, especially the data at the alignment level they needed, then that was going to help them out. And that was the promise that we made to our stakeholders so that we could help them shift from data wrangling to true analysis and recommendations.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big shift and one I'm sure that was welcome with the organization. So you've been doing this for a while, as you mentioned earlier in the call. Can you share like any words of advice or anything that you would say to someone getting into a new chief data officer role? Anything they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing is trust in data, right? If you don't have trust in data, none of the other pieces matter. And the way that we think about it, the way I personally think about it, is I need to make sure that the data has integrity. And to do that, we don't make up data or change data. It has to have a system of record and a source and a reason why that data maybe has changed. And just that simple concept of making sure that the data matches source and we can prove that it matches source is what everything flows from.
Mhm. Yeah, trust is so important. And then once it's broken, it's very, very hard to get back. It's a very true thing. Well, I think those are all the questions that I had for today. Thank you so much, Chris Eldredge, for joining me today. I really appreciated it. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much.